life and my life is like a lamp to a world that is searching for the path. We have become the example of Christ, and we are now the light of the world. Can the world see the radiance of Christ in you?
Evangelism does not happen by accident. Discipleship does not happen by accident. If we're going to fulfill our God-given mission as a church, we need to be intentional and reach out and share and introduce people to Jesus Christ.
Africa is an amazing continent with 50% of its population under the age of 18. If we impact the children, we would have impacted the future of the church and the future of our world.
Each one of us has something to bring to the table. Are you willing to release your resources? Surrendering your material goods or your gifts and talents or your time or your heart? What are you going to do?
If we're going to plant the 300 churches, if we're going to reach out to 1 million people through evangelism, if we're going to disciple 100,000 in this nation, and if we are going to have an impact with the poor, with the needy, with children, with all the others who are part of our communities around us, it's not going to happen unless you have committed yourself to the purposes of God and you have been faithful to live by those purposes. Today we're looking at principle number 6. We have already looked at 5 of them. The first one is that God is a giver of wealth. Therefore, be faithful to give him back what is his. Do not steal from the hand that is trying to bless you. The second one was, without a vision, a people perish. If you don't know where you're going with your finances, you will end up nowhere. You have to have financial goals. Number 3, tell your money what to do. Nobody begins to build without a plan. And if you're planless, you will be penniless. And so you need to think through how to invest, or rather how to budget your resources. Number 4, what's that in your hands? God asked Moses at the burning bush. And God will ask us, what is it I have already given you through which you can generate revenue? And I shared with you the different ways that as a family we have sought to generate revenue on top of our salary, because God has given you gifts and skills. And if you want to create wealth, then you need to multiply your income streams. And then last time we looked at principle number 5, say no to debt. Debt is the fast elevator down to poverty. And so you do not want to take up debt. It will rob you clean. We want to look at principle number 6. So turn with me to Matthew chapter 25, and we'll read from verse 14 through to verse 30. Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven can be illustrated by the story of a man going on a long trip. He called together his servants and entrusted his money to them while he was gone. He gave 5 bags of silver to one, 2 bags of silver to the second one, and 1 bag of silver to the last one, dividing it in proportion to their ability." Now, some of your translations say he gave a talent, 5 talents 2 talents, and 1 talent. The talent isn't the word wasn't used the same way as we use it today. Today we mean it in the sense of a skill, ability, a talent. In Jesus' day, this would have been a monetary unit, and it was a large sum of money. Some commentators estimate that it was the equivalent of 3 years' earning for a day laborer. So it's a large amount of money that he gives these 3 men. The servant who received the 5 bags of silver began to invest the money and earned 5 more. The servant with 2 bags of silver also went to work and earned 2 more. But the servant who received the 1 bag of silver dug a hole in the ground and hid the master's money. After a long time, their master returned from his trip and called them to give an account of how they had used his money. The servant to whom he had entrusted the 5 bags of silver came forward with 5 more and said, "Master, you gave me 5 bags of silver to invest. I have earned 5 more." The master was full of praise. "Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let us celebrate together." The servant who had received the 2 bags of silver came forward and said, "Master, you gave me 2 bags of silver to invest, and I have earned 2 more." The master said, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount. So now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let us celebrate together." Then the servant with the 1 bag of silver came and said, "Master, I knew that you were a harsh man, harvesting crops you didn't plant and gathering crops you didn't cultivate. I was afraid I would lose your money, and so I hid it in the earth. Look, here is your money back." But the master replied, "You wicked and lazy servant. If you knew I harvested crops I didn't plant and gathered crops I didn't cultivate, why didn't you deposit my money in the bank? At least the bank would have given me an interest on it." Then he ordered, "Take the money from this servant and give it to the one with 10 bags. Verse 29, note, "To those who use well what they are given, even more will be given, and they will have abundance. But from those who do nothing, even what little they have will be taken away. Now throw this useless servant into outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." Many of us here cry out to God on an ongoing, regular basis that God would relieve us of the debt and the despair we have vis-a-vis our finances. And we pray for wealth. It's not just enough to be debt-free. "Lord, please bless me. Bless my children. Give us means. Give me a home. Give me a car. Give me a good job. Give me stability. Give me retirement." And I can imagine that some of us will go to heaven at the end of life and stand before the throne of God, and we will say to God in an accusatory tone, "God, every day I prayed that you would give me wealth while I was still on earth, but you never answered my prayer." And God will respond and say, "Oh, but I did." And you'll ask and say, "When? I was a poor man all my life." And God will answer and say, "Every month I gave you a little, and over your lifetime I entrusted you with millions upon millions of shillings." And we might respond and say, "Oh, but that was my salary. I thought that was for me to spend and eat. I was praying for a big lump sum of money that I can do something with, and this you never gave me." And God will say to you, "You foolish servant, to those who use well what they are given, even more will be given, and they will have abundance. But to those who eat it all up, and they do nothing with it, and they do not invest it, and they do not grow it, and there is no interest return on the money I have given them, even what little they have will be taken away. Imagine if God said, I am going to bless you with 500 million shillings, but I'm not going to give it all to you at once because it will ruin you and destroy you. I will give it to you a little at a time at the end of each month. And that's what he's doing for many of us here. We're well paid. We are the middle class of this family, of this country. We have means. But how are you using it? Principle number 6 is invest your money so that it grows. Make your money grow. Now we may ask the question, but we feel so poor. Where do we find money to invest? And if you remember clearly, I've repeated this over and over again in almost every sermon in this series. If you're living on more than 60% of your take-home salary, you're living beyond your means, and you are on the highway to poverty. So where does the money to invest come from? We looked at a budget for a fictive gentleman called Steve, and we say 10% of your budget is set aside as a tithe to the one who gives wealth, and you cannot rob him. If you rob the hand that is trying to bless you, then it will not bless you. And so you set aside 10%. We say 10%, the second 10% goes into a retirement fund for the day that you will finally stop working. Because with 50 years of work life, you must finance 25 years. With 40 years of work life, you must finance a third of your life with money that you set aside. If you do not start at the age of 25, you're headed for a retirement in poverty. So you start early, 25 years, put aside 10%, and do not touch it for the next 50 years. Then we say the third 10% goes into investments like shares that you do not touch for the next 20 years. The fourth 10% goes to replace those things that you use and that you need but that will die. Your car has a life expectancy. I encouraged you, whatever car you buy, if you're getting it from a showroom, it should have a life with you of 15 years. If you're getting it mitumba, secondhand, it's been on the road and has been used on our potholes here 10 years before you replace it. But by the time you replace it, you should already have saved what you need to go and buy another one and not take debt. So that's 10%. Altogether, that's 40%. The rest of your life, your fees, your rent, your food, your entertainment, your medical, everything else fits in the 60%. And when you cross the 60% line, you are headed for poverty. So this is where you find the money to invest. At least 10% is a tithe. I call that an investment. You know why? Because this is what God says in Proverbs chapter 19, verse 17. You pay in your tithe, but it's also an investment. Proverbs 19 and verse 17. When you help the poor, you are lending to the Lord, and He pays wonderful interest on your loan. He will pay it back, and he will pay it with interest. Now, how do you lend to God? He gives us a solution there. When you help the poor, when you invest in the kingdom, when you are kind and generous to those who do not have, when you enable the work of God, you are lending to the Lord and He will pay you back. The tellers at what I call Heaven Investment Bank are often dressed as little children asking for food because they are hungry and starving. They are often dressed, the tellers are often dressed as people in need of medical care and intervention, and they cannot afford it themselves. They are often dressed as that mama who comes to your gate and knocks and pleads and asks for food because she has a child at home and she doesn't have food for that child. When you help the poor, you are lending to the Lord and He will pay it back with interest. And the Lord's interest isn't cash for cash. He will pay it back with health. He will pay it back with protection. He will pay it back with blessings. He will pay it back with caring for you, for your children, for your things, and whatever other way God will bless you in abundance that you could not purchase. That's heaven's bank. First investment is your tithe. In Matthew chapter 6 verse 20, Jesus also said, "Don't hoard treasures down here on earth, where it gets eaten by moths and corroded with rust, or worse, stolen by robbers. Instead, store your treasure in heaven, where it's safe from moth and rust and burglars, and it doesn't even devalue against inflation." You know, inflation in Kenya for the last 3 months has been running at a high of 11.75. In heaven, inflation is zero. Any money you bank into heaven's bank, there is no inflation on it, and God adds an interest. So that's your tithe. Where do you go from there? Let me give you 5 secrets of banking, of investing, so that you understand how to invest. We have said from your salary, 10% you invest in your tithe. The other 20%, even 30%, because the 10% that you put aside for replacements should be invested so that it grows. So 30% of your salary is going into investments. Where do you put it? Let me give you 5 general rules of investment. The first is this: low risk brings back low return. This is a rule of thumb of investment. The higher the risk you take in investing, the greater the returns will be. Now, this sounds good. The lowest risk you can take on your investment is to get your 30%, to put it in a plastic bag, to seal it with sellotape, and to put it in a box, a metal box, and go and bury it under your bed. It is safe, no one knows it's there, and no one will steal it. But you will get zero return on that sort of safe investment. The riskiest investment that Kenyans like is DESI and pyramid schemes and all these high returns, Ponzi schemes, where you're promised, 50% return in 3 months. The people who, by the way, there are people who benefit from a Ponzi scheme, but they're the first 10 people. The rest all lose. So if you're lucky, you're number 1 to 10, you get a return. But the risk is so high, it could wipe you out and you lose everything. Now, in between those 2 extremes, there are all the other investment vehicles. I call this the ladder of wealth. Let's put it up and I'll walk you through it. If you want to invest, at the bottom is hiding your money under your bed. There is no return on that one. The next lowest investment that is safe is to put your money in the bank. You don't leave money lying in the bank because the bank will never pay you more than the inflation rate. Right now, the banks are paying 7%. Requirement of the government, minimal return on your savings account is 7%. But the inflation is 11.75, almost 12%. So you're growing your money by 7%, 7 steps in this way, and inflation comes and takes 12% backwards, and you end up poorer than you were when you started. So you don't leave your money in the bank. They'll smile at you, they'll remember your birthday, they'll give you little perks, but they are eating you dry. And you don't leave your money in the bank. Poor investment. Now you can put it in a fixed deposit that will give you 8%. It's a little better, but it is less than the inflation. You're still losing money. The third place you invest are SACCOs. SACCOs are good, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But on average, they give you a 10% return on your investment with dividends. So they're almost where the inflation is presently, and they're a good place to invest. Take your money out of the bank and put it in a SACCO. It's a better investment. It's still somewhat safe. Beyond SACCOs are T-bonds, treasury bonds. And these next three, bonds and shares and bills, you need to know what they're giving back because it's not stable. It goes up and down. Sometimes shares are better than bonds. Sometimes bonds are better than shares. You need to watch it. But they give you around the inflation return. So at least your money is not losing. Shares will give you 12% return when you invest in them. Bills, T-bills, have been known to go up to 20%, even more here in Kenya. And so they're much better than shares. And they're guaranteed by the government that you will be paid back. They're still safe. And then you go into venture capitalism, where you lend a young businessman money so that he has capital to begin, but you get 50% of the profits back. It's good unless his business collapses, so the risk is higher. And then you can bank your money in land and in real estate. And in Kenya, this is a good investment. But in America, in 2008, the many people who had invested in real estate homes, the price of homes fell through the floor, and people found that their investment in a home had all of a sudden overnight lost value completely. So the risk is high, and you could lose all your money. On top of bills, on top of real estate is farming. Now, some of you are surprised to see farming up there because you all know there is no money in farming. But you know what the problem is? It's not the farming. It is that 90% of Kenyans don't do agriculture, they do culture. If you're farming maize and beans and gouache and those sorts of things, you will never see money. Because when your maize come, they come to the market at the same time as the rest of the country. And so the price of maize falls and you will never see money. If you farm with rain, there is nowhere in the Bible that it says that farmers are to wait for rain before they farm. If you want to do agriculture and not culture, that one is culture. If you want to do agriculture, the first thing you do is you find a water source that does not depend on rain. And then you grow your crops at the off-season of the market. When everybody is growing maize, don't grow maize. Grow the thing that is not available on the market. So, for example, tomatoes are never there in December. And there is a huge demand for tomatoes in December. You can sell a kilo of tomatoes at 3 times the average price the rest of the year. If you have a water source, Then you do agriculture and you farm high-value crops in the off-season. That is ginger and garlic and French beans and bullet chilies and, all these different products that can be exported or that come to the market when nobody else has them. And then you corner the market and you make tons of money. We have a number of professional farmers here. I know because I've talked to them, even visited some of these farms, and they're making money over, hand over, how does the expression go? Hand over heels? Something like that. My daughter is a farmer, and she exports bullet chilies to London. She makes an average of 50,000 shillings a week on bullet chilies on 1 acre of land. So are you doing culture or agriculture? Most Kenyans are doing culture. Their forefathers farmed maize, so they're also farming maize, and they'll never see money, okay? And then business. Business can give you a 400% return, but 90% of businesses fail in the first 3 to 6 months. And so the risk is very high. This is the ladder to wealth. And when you invest this way. Okay, advice number one was that, low risk, low return. Advice number 2 is you must beat inflation. Advice number 3, secret for investing, is get good advice. Proverbs chapter 15 and verse 22. Without advice, plans go wrong, but with many advisors, they succeed. Do not follow the market. Go talk to somebody who understands investments. The problem with the market is people come and tell you, buy Kenyan, buy Kenyan, buy Kenyan. Every Kenyan is buying Kenyan. The prices are inflated. They will never come to this height again. And if you follow the market and follow everyone, you will buy and then you will lose money. Go to a financial advisor and they will tell you, when everybody is buying a share, don't touch it. Buy the one nobody is buying, that is deflated. And when everybody starts selling, you now can sell yours to them, and then you buy theirs at a lower price. And so get some good advice. Number 4, diversify your investment. Ecclesiastes chapter 11 and verse 2. Invest in 7 ventures, yes, even 8, for you do not know what disaster may come upon the land. Don't put all your money in one basket. And then the 5th little secret of investment is Proverbs 13 and verse 11. Wealth from get-rich-quick schemes quickly disappears, but wealth from hard work grows little by little over time. Be patient and invest without being greedy. Do you know the people who make money from shares? The people who make money from shares are not the ones who watch the market every day, reading that section of the newspaper, going on the web to find out what shares are costing. Those ones never make money. The people who make money from shares are the ones who buy a share and forget it for 20 years. And they come and check it after 20 years. The ones who ride the market, buy, sell, buy, sell. The guy who makes the share is the one who's buying and selling for you. He's the one who makes the money. You lose against the market, and your return, because of the fees you give him when he buys and sells for you, means that you do not make money on your shares. He makes the money for serving you. And so buy your shares, be patient, 20 years, come and check how they're doing, and you would have made money. My dear friends, principle number 6 is simply this. Invest and grow your money. You're saving 30% of it. Do not put it in the bank. Go and invest it. I promised you last time I preached that I will also in this sermon tell you how you can buy or build a house without going into serious debt? So let me do that to conclude this message, because I believe that owning your own home is one of the best investments you can make. Whenever you pay rent, you're buying a house for your landlord. But when you own your own home, it frees up your rent so that now you can invest it somewhere else and you can grow your wealth. But how do you manage? If you go and take a 7 million shilling loan from the bank at the rates 14.5% interest in Kenya, and you have it for 15 years, you will end up paying almost 2.5 times back, almost 18 million, and you will, for the next 15 years, you will have this burden on your back. You become a slave of the lender and it will eat you. You cannot make any other investments until you're finally done with your mortgage. So how do you own a house without going into serious debt? Okay, I'll tell you how. But this one is serious, okay? And you might hear it and say, hey, apana, we can't do that. But let me tell you so that you know how to own a house without going into serious debt. The first thing you do is do not go and buy a ready-made house. The many flats you're seeing around Nairobi, do not go and buy one of those. The reason being, by the time that flat is put on the market, the architect has made a profit of it. And the contractor has made a huge profit, covered all his costs, covered any problems that may have come up with sourcing and such, and he walks away to the bank laughing, he's made his profit. The owner of the property and the one who finances the building has made their profit. And the bank you go and borrow the money from is going to make its profit. The price that you are buying at is at least twice what it cost to build that flat. So don't go and buy a flat. Otherwise, your money is working for everybody else and you are left a slave to a mortgage. So that's step number one. So what do? You go and join a SACCO. Okay? For this reason, a SACCO allows you to borrow money at about 6% interest per annum. It is less than half what the banks will charge you in terms of interest rate. Now, they will only lend you the money if you have deposited into the SACCO for at least 2 years, and they have seen consistency, and they have seen you build up your deposits, and they can see that you're trustworthy. They do not ask you for a security. They will lend you up to 3 times what you have borrowed with no security at 6% interest. And while you are depositing, they give you a 10% return on your money. You can't get a better deal than a SACCO. If you're not in a SACCO and you're keeping your money in a bank, woe ye to you. I don't even know what to tell you. Go join a SACCO and put your money there. For 2 years, build up your deposit to 1 million shillings, which means you can now borrow 3 million, 1 of your own and 2 from the SACCO, 3 million. Go borrow the 3 million, they'll give you 3 or 4 years to pay it back. But because the interest rate is so low, it's not a noose round your neck, okay? Unlike the bank loan at 14.5% interest and all the other charges and all the securities that you have to put down. When you borrow the 3 million, here's what you do, guys. You take 1 million and you go and buy a broti. Okay? 50 meters by 100 meters. It's just less than 1/8 of an acre. And you don't buy it in Nairobi because that is very expensive. You go and buy it 20 kilometers out of Nairobi. The further you go from Nairobi, the cheaper land becomes. So you go along Mombasa Road, you pass Athi River, you pass, Daystar, and you pass Lukenya, and you keep going to a place called Chumvi. And you buy 1/8 of an acre. In Chumvi, an acre is going for maybe about 4 million, 5 million, maybe even less. The further away from the main road you are, the cheaper it becomes. So at 5 million, 1/8 of an acre will cost you maybe about 400,000, 500,000, something like that. So with your 1 million, you can buy 1/8 of an acre. You can fence your 1/8 of an acre. Now you've got the land, okay, 1 million. And then you take your second million and you go and buy 2 40-foot containers. And you put the one container like this, and you measure 10 feet from that one and put the second one here. And then you cut open both containers and fold the metal and, weld it together on both sides. What that does, it gives you 2 containers enclosed. It comes to 40 feet by 26 feet. That is enough space for you to put a master and suite, a kitchen, a bathroom, 2 bedrooms, and a living room. Okay? So you do that and you put a roof over it. That is now your third million. The first million bought the land. The second million bought the containers. A 40-foot container right now is going for about 430,000, 450,000 per container. And you fabricate it using the third million. And now, because you have 1/8 of an acre, behind the house, you now grow all your vegetables, and under the container, you put chickens. What more do you need? Now you're laughing, and you're laughing because you're saying, "Ay, apana, me, I've got too much pedo to go and live in a container." Okay? Guys, let me tell you, this has become the new way that people around the world are purchasing living space. They're putting up containers in London. They're putting them up in places like Japan. I have been to Dubai and seen container homes. And even in parts of the US. So let me show you a couple of pictures of containers being used as homes around the world. All these are containers. All these pictures you will see. It's exactly what I'm talking about. And they look good and they are workable. They have become the new way to start your home. Remember that your home, your first home, is not the home you retire in. It's called a starter home because it stops you paying rent and building wealth. And you can do some amazing things using a container. In London, because house costs have become so tremendously expensive, they are now using 20-foot containers for single people. And what it has is a little shower in a corner, and it has a little, kitchen table, and it has a bed and a chair. And you live in a 20-foot container because homes have become too expensive. You do this, you spend 3 million, you pay back the 3 million in 3 or 4 years to the SACCO, and then you live in this for another, 5 years. After 5 years, you save what would have been your rent, and you go to the SACCO, and now you can borrow more, or you can go to the bank, and now you can borrow money, sell this thing, and you go and buy your flat. What more should I say? So step number 6, grow your money through investments. And may God bless you as you go and process this. Let's rise to our feet. Father, as we come to the end of the service, we pray that you would give us wisdom to go and think through these things that make for wise investments. That we may not be like that third man who was given a talent, and you called him foolish because he did not invest. So give us wisdom, show us what we must do. And all God's people said, Amen. May God's blessings be upon you. Have a great week.